Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some pretty interesting news coming out of Iran.
Yeah.
There are rumors flying around about the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei's health, and we've even got whispers of a potential successor already being chosen.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating situation. We've got a pretty interesting mix of sources to kind of unpack it all.
Yeah, so we'll be taking a look at Khamenei's background from his Wikipedia article, and then we're going to dive into some recent reports from the Economic Times and NDTV.
Right.
Okay, so let's just start with the big picture here. Khamenei has been supreme leader for 35 years.
Right.
I mean, that is longer than most world leaders even stay in power. What has allowed him to hold on to this position for so long?
Well, if you look at his Wikipedia entry, it really paints this picture of a leader who has been really strategic in consolidating his power.
Wow.
I mean, he wasn't even initially qualified to be supreme leader.
Really?
The rules actually had to be changed for him to take over.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was that assassination attempt back in 1981 that paralyzed his arm. It's almost like something out of a movie.
It does sound pretty dramatic. And it seems like he's really used those events to his advantage, building a powerful image and really tightening his grip on all the institutions.
Absolutely. He controls the military, the media, even influences who can be a candidate in the elections.
Wow.
So, that level of control makes any potential transition of power really a huge deal. It could be pretty volatile.
Yeah. And that's where these news reports from the Economic Times and NDTV come in.
Right.
They're actually claiming that Khamenei is currently in a coma and that a secret meeting of this assembly of experts was held to choose his successor.
That's right, yeah. Now, to understand this assembly, you need to know that they are the body that's responsible for actually choosing the supreme leader.
Okay.
They're made up of all these Islamic scholars and jurists. They have enormous power in Iranian politics.
So they basically, they get to decide who runs the country.
Right, exactly.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And the fact that they allegedly met in secret
Yeah.
while Khamenei is allegedly incapacitated,
Right.
that adds just a whole other layer of intrigue to this whole situation. It really suggests a level of regency and maybe even some fear within the regime.
And who is his alleged successor?
Well, the reports claim it's none other than Khamenei's own son, Mojtaba Khamenei.
Hold on. His son. That sounds like something straight out of a dynasty, not a modern political system.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's a pretty unusual move for Iran. Dynastic succession is usually something you see in places like North Korea or Syria, where power is really concentrated within a family.
So why would they choose to go this route?
Well, the reports suggest that there's a lot of pressure to keep the decision quiet. They're really worried about a public backlash. It seems that even a regime as tightly controlled as Iran's is still wary of public opinion.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if maybe there's some cracks starting to show in their control.
Possibly.
But if they're so worried about a backlash, why choose the son in the first place? I mean, what makes Mojtaba Khamenei the right person for the job, at least in their eyes?
Oh, that's where things get even more interesting. According to Wikipedia, Mojtaba is Khamenei's second son. He's known to be very powerful.
Okay.
But behind the scenes, he's a very private person. There's not really a lot of publicly available information about him.
So we have this potential successor who's a bit of a mystery man. I mean, what do we know about his political leanings, his experience, or his worldviews?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And it's one that's causing a lot of anxiety both inside and outside of Iran, because without really understanding who Mojtaba Khamenei is and what he stands for, it's really impossible to predict what his leadership might look like.
So let's try and piece together what we can. I mean, the reports mention that he played a pretty key role in suppressing the 2009 protests.
Yeah.
What does that tell us?
Well, that's a really crucial detail. The 2009 protests were huge.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of people were out in the streets challenging the election results.
Yeah.
And the government responded brutally. There were widespread arrests, a lot of violence.
And if Mojtaba was truly instrumental in that crackdown,
Right.
it doesn't really paint a very nice picture of a leader who's open to dissent or compromise.
No, it doesn't. It really suggests that he might be even more hardline than his father, maybe even more willing to use authoritarian tactics to stay in control.
That's a pretty unsettling thought, especially when you consider the already tense situation in that region.
It is.
So what could this mean for Iran's foreign policy? Would we just see a continuation of their current approach, or could things shift pretty dramatically under Mojtaba's leadership?
Yeah, that's a question that has a lot of world leaders kind of on edge right now. Unfortunately, there really isn't a lot of information available about Mojtaba's his views on foreign policy. He hasn't held any kind of public positions that would give us insight into, how he feels about things like the nuclear program or relations with the West.
So we're basically staring into this black box, not knowing what's going to come out.
Pretty much, yeah. And that uncertainty is what makes this whole situation so fascinating and so potentially dangerous.
Yeah, this is definitely a story we're going to want to keep a close eye on.
Absolutely. The stakes are incredibly high, and the world is really watching to see how this whole succession drama unfolds.
All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about Khamenei's long reign, the rumors about his health, this alleged secret meeting, and this mysterious son, this potential successor. But there's still so much we don't know, right?
That's right. And that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive. We'll take a closer look at Mojtaba Khamenei, try and unravel this enigma and see what we can learn about what his potential leadership might mean for Iran and the world. Picking up where we left off, one of the most perplexing aspects of all this is just the lack of clarity surrounding Khamenei's health.
Yeah.
On the one hand, we have these reports from the Economic Times and NDTV claiming he's in a coma.
Right. And that would obviously explain why there's such an urgency to pick a successor.
Right.
But then we have this photo released by Khamenei's office showing him meeting with this foreign envoy.
Yeah.
It was like they're trying to project this image of business as usual.
It does seem like a pretty deliberate attempt to counter those coma rumors.
Right.
Reassure the public and maybe even international observers that things are under control.
But wouldn't that just make this alleged secret meeting of the Assembly of Experts even more suspicious? I mean, why the rush to choose a successor if Khamenei is actually okay?
That's exactly right. It really does create this contradiction that's hard to ignore.
Yeah.
I mean, if we just take the photo at face value, then the secrecy surrounding the Assembly's meeting kind of suggests that there's something else going on, something they're not telling us.
So are we thinking maybe like a long-term strategy?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they're preparing for a transition further down the line, regardless of Khamenei's immediate health.
Yeah.
And using this alleged coma as a cover.
Yeah.
To just kind of push through their preferred candidate.
Yeah, that's a very plausible theory. I mean, it would allow them to manage the transition a lot more carefully and minimize the risk of internal power struggles or challenges from other factions.
And it would give Mojtaba time to kind of establish himself and really consolidate his power within the regime.
But let's not forget, the reports also mentioned that there was a lot of pressure and even threats within that secret meeting.
Right.
It sounds like not everyone is really on board with this succession plan.
That's a really key point. It really suggests that there are these divisions within the regime, maybe even factions that are vying for power.
Right.
This whole thing might be a lot more volatile than it appears on the surface.
So we have this potential power struggle playing out kind of behind the scenes.
Right.
And in the center of it all is this enigmatic figure, Mojtaba Khamenei.
Right.
We've talked about, his alleged role in the 2009 protests.
Yeah.
But beyond that, who is he really? What kind of leader might he be?
Well, like we said earlier, Mojtaba has been very good at staying out of the spotlight. He's a master of working behind the scenes, which makes it even harder to kind of analyze his leadership style.
Yeah, it's like trying to decipher a code without the key.
We just have these snippets of information, these rumors, these allegations.
Right.
But there's no real clear picture of his ideology or his vision for Iran.
Exactly.
So let's speculate a little bit. What breadcrumbs do we have to follow? I mean, the reports mention his close ties to the Revolutionary Guards.
Right.
This powerful military force that's been really instrumental in Iran projecting its power throughout the region.
Yeah, that connection is definitely significant. I mean, the Revolutionary Guards, they've been really deeply involved in the conflicts in Syria and Iraq and Yemen.
Right.
And they have a real interest in making sure that Iran remains powerful in the region.
So could we maybe see like a more assertive or even militaristic foreign policy under Mojtaba?
It's definitely possible.
Hmm.
If he sees those conflicts as really important to Iran's national security or as a way to counter the influence of, regional rivals like Saudi Arabia or Israel, we could see Iran get a lot more involved.
And speaking of Israel, that's another area where things could get really tense.
Right.
We know Khamenei has been, vehemently opposed to Israel's existence.
Right.
Would we see a similar stance from Mojtaba?
Again, it's hard to say for sure,
Right.
but his connection to the Revolutionary Guard, who definitely share his father's anti-Israel ideology,
Yeah.
suggests that he might take a similar hard line.
That's a worrying thought.
Yeah.
The last thing the region needs is another leader just fueling those tensions.
Yeah, absolutely. The potential for things to go wrong and for things to escalate is always there in such a volatile environment.
Right. And what about Iran's relationship with the West? I mean, would Mojtaba continue his father's policy of distrust and confrontation?
It's hard to imagine a real big change in that regard.
Hmm.
The Islamic Republic's ideology has always been based on resisting Western influence.
Right.
It's really unlikely that Mujtaba, having been raised in that system, would suddenly change course and be more conciliatory.
So we're looking at a potential continuation of sanctions and diplomatic standoffs, and maybe even an increase in these proxy conflicts.
Yeah, that's a real possibility.
Okay.
Of course, it's still too early to say anything for sure.
Yeah.
We need more information, more insight into how Mojtaba thinks and his worldview.
Right. Which brings us back to this really frustrating lack of transparency. It's like
Yeah.
we're trying to solve this puzzle, but with half the pieces missing.
Exactly. And that uncertainty is really, really fueling a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
not just in Iran, but, among people watching all this unfold.
Right.
All those trying to make sense of what this potential power shift could mean for the region and for the world.
It's a good reminder that even in our hyper-connected world, there are still places where information is really tightly controlled,
Yeah.
where power operates in the shadows.
Right, and those shadows can be really dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially when they're hiding people as powerful and as unknown as Mojtaba Khamenei.
So we've talked about the potential implications of Mojtaba's leadership in terms of foreign policy.
Right.
But what about domestically?
Right.
How might his rise to power impact the Iranian people?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and
Yeah.
and one that's causing a lot of concern inside Iran. The reports we've been talking about, they mention this potential for backlash from the public,
Right.
and that's not something to take lightly.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen how the Iranian people have taken to the streets in the past to protest against injustice or authoritarianism.
Right.
So could Mojtaba's leadership trigger another wave of unrest?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
If he's seen as illegitimate or if he doesn't address the economic problems in the country, it could very easily lead to large protests and instability.
And let's not forget his, alleged role in the 2009 crackdown.
Right.
If he uses those same tactics to quell any dissent,
Right.
it could just spiral into this cycle of violence and repression.
Exactly. And that kind of instability inside Iran could have a ripple effect across the whole region,
Right.
Potentially making existing conflicts worse and creating new ones.
It's a sobering thought, and it really underscores just how high the stakes are.
Yeah.
The future of Iran and maybe even the region really hangs in the balance. We've spent a lot of time kind of picking apart these reports,
Right.
and trying to figure out, what Mojtaba's leadership might mean for Iran.
All right.
But I think it's important to remember that a lot of this is still just speculation.
Yeah, that's a really important point. As fascinating as this all is, we do need to be,
Yeah.
a little bit skeptical. I mean, no one in the Iranian government has actually said that Khamenei is ill,
Right.
let alone that they've already chosen a successor.
Right. Their silence has been deafening.
Yeah.
It really says a lot about how information is controlled in Iran.
Mhm.
But that makes me wonder, could these leaks about the secret meeting and Mojtaba being chosen, could those have been intentional?
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Are we seeing some kind of power play happening inside the regime?
Well,
Maybe a group that doesn't like Mojtaba is trying to sabotage him
right.
by leaking this information and maybe turning the public against him.
It would be risky.
It would.
But considering what's at stake here, it's not totally crazy.
It's not impossible. It really adds another layer of intrigue to all of this.
It does.
It's not just a power transition. It's maybe infighting within the regime itself.
Exactly. And it makes it really clear that we need to think critically about this.
Yeah.
As we try to figure out what's going on, we need to consider the sources, their motivations,
Right.
and the possibility that there's misinformation out there.
Absolutely. So listeners, as you follow this story, question everything.
Right.
Don't just accept what you're being told. Do some digging, look for different perspectives,
Yeah.
and try to put the pieces together yourselves.
Because even seemingly reliable sources can get things wrong.
Oh, all the time, especially
Right.
when you're dealing with a regime like Iran that's so secretive.
So what should we be looking for as this story develops? What are some key things that might give us a better idea of what's actually going on?
Well, the first thing is obviously any official statement from the Iranian government. Right.
Will they confirm or deny that Khamenei is sick?
Right. Yeah.
Will they even address these rumors about a successor?
Yeah, their response or lack of response will tell us a lot.
It will.
And beyond the official statements, I think we should pay attention to how the Iranian media is covering this.
Right.
Both the state-controlled media
Right.
and the independent outlets.
Are there any hints that maybe some people within the regime disagree with the official story?
Right. Are there any signs that maybe their control is slipping a little bit?
And of course, we need to be watching for any reaction from the public.
Yeah.
Will there be protests?
Right.
Will people speak out against Mojtaba?
Yeah, the reaction of the Iranian people is really crucial here.
It is.
They've shown before that they're not afraid to make their voices heard.
Right. Even if it means getting in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Power really does come from the people,
It does.
even if it's often, suppressed or manipulated.
That's right. This whole deep dive has been a roller coaster.
It has.
We've gone from rumors of a coma
Yeah.
to whispers of this secret plan to choose a successor, from fears of dynastic rule to hints that there might be these power struggles happening within the regime.
Yeah.
It's clear that this is far from over.
No, it's not, and that's what makes it so fascinating. We're watching history in the making,
Yeah.
and who knows what's going to happen next.
But for me, one of the most interesting takeaways from all of this is just how little information there is.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even in this world where we're all connected, there are still places that are very secretive, where power is hidden.
Yeah.
And the truth is really hard to find.
It's a sobering thought.
It is,
Oh.
and it highlights how important it is to stay informed, to look for different perspectives,
Right.
and to never just accept things at face value. So, listeners, as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave you with this. The future of Iran is very uncertain.
It is.
But now you have a better understanding of what's at stake.
Right.
So keep asking questions, keep digging for information, and keep paying attention to this story.
Yeah.
Because what happens in Iran could affect all of us.